Hi, and welcome back to English for Communication 2. I'm Stephen Judge, and today we're going to begin Unit 7, Life is a Beautiful Thing. In the first lesson, I want to go over life signposts, common conversations and topics in which people share their experience in life. So in life, something happens no matter where you're from. We all are born, we get older, and we die. But along the way, there are some great moments that we share with each other. And we share how they're different and how they're the same, no matter where we're from. So let's look at some of these signposts in life. So some of them are ability, and we talk about actions that we learn to do as we go along life. We also have education signposts where we talk about school. We have social life signposts where we talk about the development of relationships. We have responsibility signposts where we talk about the moment where we've gained more responsibility. And then also with our family, there are several signposts. So let's look at what these are exactly. So as ability, often questions are, how old were you when you, and then these are some abilities, started to crawl, started to walk, spoke your first word, learned to read, learned to ride a bicycle. Now these are mostly for when you're young and when you were a child. Parents who are young now, who have children, will talk about these in present continuous instead of past tense. But we also have more mature. So for how old were you when you learned to drive a car? Or maybe in Thailand, drive a motorbike. We also talk about ability. How old were you when you learned an important skill, like something that is your career? So these are kind of conversations people have on a regular basis, that they have shared experience and are curious on what's similar and what's different for you. When it comes to education, we often ask, how was? So how was your first day of school? That's a big signpost. How was middle school for you? How was high school? And how was university? So these are different ages. So like childhood, teenage years, and beginning adult are all signpost periods in someone's life. Sometimes we ask about special events, like a school play or sports day, something that you have like a special memory that was important to you. Or finally, your graduation. Everyone remembers the day they graduated, the cap and gown. So these are all memorable, special moments that people have about education. Social signposts, we ask, who was your, and talk about specific relationships. So who was your first friend? Who was your childhood best friend? Who was your first crush? And who was your first date? And finally, who was your first kiss? So these are moments people look back on or talk about their first person with all these. Next, we have responsibility signposts, where we ask, how old were you when you went to your first sleepover? And so this is a responsibility, because this is the first time you slept in a building without your parents or without a family member. So your parents were trusting you to behave. Next, we have went to a school by yourself. Now, different ways of going to school, walking, driving. But usually the first time you do it by yourself without your parents or a family member is a big responsibility. The parents let you outside the world, and you're responsible for yourself. You can also, the first time you stayed home alone, where your parents, your brothers, your sisters, no one's home, just you, and your job is not to burn down the house. So often people remember the first time and are usually scared or nervous or maybe have a great time when this happened. How old were you when the first time you were given your first phone? Now, for a lot of people these days have a way different answer. For me, in my generation, the age could be a teenager or in your 20s. But for people younger than me in today's generation, it could be when you were 4 or 5 years old. But phones are usually an expensive item that you're responsible for not losing or not breaking. So getting your first phone can be a big sign of responsibility. In that same mode, we also talk about getting your first car or your first motorbike. Or we also say getting your first driver's license, where the government says you can drive. So these are big signs of responsibility. And also, we also say your first apartment or your first home, where you live by yourself. You have to pay your own bills, take care of your own building. So these are all signposts people go through in life of responsibility. Now, last we have with family, the first time you maybe met your wife, met your husband, met your girlfriend, boyfriend, the first date you went on, the first time you kissed, the first time you met your boyfriend or girlfriend's parents, the first vacation you had together, the first fight you had, the proposal. How did you propose? How did he propose? How did she propose? The people talk about the wedding, the first house they got together. People always refer to the first year together, the goods, the ups, the downs, the things they learned about each other. They talk about the first child and learning how to be parents together. They also talk about the first time the first child leaves and how it feels, knowing that you have to let the child be responsible on their own. Parents often talk about what life is like after the last child is like, years of spending together, taking care of children. Now that all the children are gone, it's just mom and dad left in the house. And often parents talk about what's it like for the first time the first child gets married and having to watch them get married and go through the stages of life without them. So these have been many of the signposts that we as people, no matter where we are, we all go through together. Though the experience might be different from person to person and culture to culture, it's always interesting and funny to see how these moments and experiences are similar and different from each other. Well, that's it for another lesson. Oh, sorry. No, it's so long, I don't want to do it again. Okay. So finally, we have signposts of family that we go through in making a new family. So we talk about dating and the first time you meet someone, your first date and your first kiss, the first time you meet their parents and whether they like you or not like you, the first vacation that you went on together, the first fight, who won, how did you make up. We talk about the proposal, who asked, when, where. We talk about details of the wedding, what it looked like, where was it. People talk about their first house together. People often describe their first year, things they learned about each other. People talk about the first child and then many children after that. People talk about the first child to leave the house to go to university, and often describe what it's like after the last child leaves. People often describe what it's like for the first child when they get married and the feeling that parents have with that. And parents also talk about what it's like to have the first grandchild. So these are some of the big moments that almost everyone goes through. It doesn't matter where you're from. These seem to be universal experiences that we have going from being born to the day we die. Though there are many moments, there are great moments along the way that we share with each other. Again, my name is Stephen Judge, and I hope you find this useful in your English conversation. Have a good day and goodbye.